have recently gotten a ton of equipment on loan for review from various manufacturers and also from All-Star Telescope, a reseller in Canada who provides services to all of North America, maybe others as well. But long story short, if you're in the US, you can use them. They graciously lent me this item within this little box. We'll see what it is in a moment. I'll be using it with some other guest stars of this video. The Founder Optics 106mm aperture refractor that I have behind me that I am currently testing, and if everything went well, I have a video on the topic. I'll link to it above. And guest starring as well will be the QHY 53715, which is a planetary camera that is really low cost by QHY with a sensor that has tiny microscopic pixels. Literally, they're 1.45 micrometers size, which means that you can use that for planetary astrophotography, even on refractors or Newtonians that don't have a lot of focal lengths. You're no longer almost forced to be using a Schmidt-Cassegrain or one of those long focal lengths scopes. You can really get cool details with just this camera if you are above the resolution limit of your telescope, which is determined by the wave nature of light and the aperture, but that's another discussion. Anyway, this telescope and this camera, they're just guest stars in this video. The main topic, the main object that we're going to have fun with, and yes, there is a good reason that we're doing it during the day. It is a solar filter, a solar wedge by Antlia. Here it is. This is a super cool little item. And what it does is it lets you observe the sun in the calcium K bandpass. And the calcium K bandpass is slightly below 400 nanometers. So it is really in the ultraviolet. And it's absolutely not usable visually. This is only for imaging, and it's actually dangerous if you try to look through this with just the eye, because there's so much UV light that gets past, even though your eye doesn't perceive anything. So it's really dangerous. And it's a very ingenious kind of system, because at its heart, this is a solar Herschel wedge. This has been around forever. It is something that can be used on a refracting telescope like the one that I have behind me, as long as it is air-spaced. So I have 3 lenses in this telescope that are air-spaced, so it's good. And as long as it doesn't have any like integrated lens at the back, so no field flattener integrated at the back, no Petzval design. So ASCAR PHQ, nope. Red Cat, nope. You don't want any telescope that has lenses at the back. Right now I have a field flattener here. This will be removed so I can use the wedge. So that's very important conditions. But once that's done, you can put on the Herschel wedge, and then you have white light observation of the sun. So how am I going to get calcium K observation of the sun? A single bandpass that will allow me to get a lot of surface details that normally wouldn't be available with just a white light image of the sun. Well, it is going to be made possible by an integrated filter. I'm not sure whether it's going to be visible. Yes, it is. Within the wedge, it is super cool. Antlia is using their knowledge in filter manufacturing to say like, hey, calcium K doesn't need to be as precise and as small of a bandpass as something like H alpha, because when you're imaging in H alpha, you want bandpasses that are in fractions of angstroms. So it's like really 3 nanometer like bandpasses that we use for deep space is never going to cut it, even together with a wedge. But this filter, this calcium K filter, is 3 nanometers bandpass, and yet it will let us get details. And it's super cool, because recently I got one of my subscribers that contacted me, I believe on Facebook or Instagram or Patreon, I don't remember, I'm so sorry, asking me like, hey, could we use astrophotography filters together with a white light filter to do solar imaging? And I was like, no, the bandpasses are not going to be tight enough. This is a completely different story. But actually, yes. Actually, yes, I was wrong. So this particular wedge by Antlia is only usable with the narrowband filter in. Do not use it without the narrowband filter, and it is only usable for imaging. Never look through this wedge with just your eye, just in case. I mean, also, there are other restrictions, and this is in the description and manual of it, so just like be careful. In that you want to make sure that your telescope aperture is less than 120 millimeters, that it is a refracting telescope. Don't use a Newtonian, don't use anything that uses mirrors. And also you want to make sure that your focal ratio is f5.5 or slower, or f5.5 and above. So f6 is good, like this telescope, f7 is good, etc., etc. And again, you don't want any lenses at the back of the telescope. The wedge came with this filter scan report and some quick explanations. And I think it's a really cool thing to be trying out these days because we are near the maximum of the solar activity. We're going to have like two super cool eclipses in North America when this year and next year. How awesome is that going to be? So this is a good time to get like a low cost alternative to something like a quark chromosphere for H alpha that is much more expensive. And talking about price, I think this is going to be around 460 Canadian rubles, Canadian dollars. I'm not sure what is the price going to be in US dollars, but it is much cheaper than something like the quark chromosphere. So this is a really nice way to get into solar imaging that goes a bit beyond just white light imaging. By the way, there is something really cool still with this little wedge, is that you have a diaphragm there to adjust the amount of light that makes it to your camera and through the wedge in general. So I've already decided that I'll keep that at minimum pretty much all the time, just because I want to be safer, and we'll see how well that works. But enough talk. How well will it work with my telescope behind me and using that little QHY 53715 camera that has USB-C fast speed? Let's try it out. And here I am completely set up and pointed to the sun. So I pointed to the sun using my AM5 mount. The telescope is doing fine. So again, I was very, very careful to make sure that there was no lens at the end of the telescope. So I removed the flattener. There is nothing, only the three lenses at the front. Those lenses are air spaced. The telescope is 107 millimeters, sorry, 106 millimeters aperture. So it is below the 120 millimeters that is supported by the wedge. And the focal ratio is f6, which is above the minimum f5.5 that is recommended by the wedge. So we are all set. We are tracking the sun. And what is really cool is you can see the sun image there on the back of the wedge, and that can be used to some extent to kind of like center the sun as a solar finder. It was still pretty hard for me to find the sun, but I am used to it because I can simply use the shadow of my telescope, and when it is the smallest, it means I'm roughly pointed towards the sun. On top of this, as I mentioned, I have the QHY 53715 camera, which with those super tiny pixels, so I can get like the best resolution possible out of my image. I'm probably above the maximum resolution that the telescope can achieve, but hey, it's fun, so let's do it. And connected to all of that, I have out of the USB cable, I have a computer that is back there in the shade so that I can actually see what's happening on the computer. And this camera is a color camera, so it's really made for planetary, and it's less good than a monochrome camera for pure solar imaging, where we're looking at only a single bandpass. But still, it's like going to be very small pixels, so a lot of fun. And would you look at the result that I have on my computer? It is amazing. I am connected to the QHY 53715. That's a mouthful, but look at this. We see so much details on the solar surface. I'm so impressed. And all of those dark spots, there are black spots on the sun. They're amazing. We have one like on the very edge of the sun. We have like this crazy group here. We have this massive one here. It's like, it's crazy. And I can move the map around to look at other areas. But wow, this is super cool. And look, we have this cluster here at the top as well. I love this. So currently with the camera at full resolution, which is still a pretty high resolution, I have roughly 40 frames per second. But I want to get this a bit higher than that, so we're gonna go for a lower, no, not that low, for maybe a lower resolution like this one. Put it at 100% and move around the sun until I find like a nice area that I want to image. Like this is a cool one, but that the cluster that's below it is what I want to find. This is what I'm looking for, and I have like 100 frames, a bit over 100 frames per second. This looks so cool. So maybe I should reduce the exposure length a little bit because it's my screen is not very bright, And so I think with that, I have like the most dynamic range that I can get. I really have like a very turbulent atmosphere, and the sun is getting low on the horizon. So I'm definitely not getting the best result here. But let's give it a try. I'm going to start the capture, maybe get a couple of minutes, and we'll see what we can get out of it. Okay, we are a couple of minutes later, so I am going to stop the recording. Here we are. We've taken a few gigabytes. Let's see, is there another area I'd like to capture? Okay, let's try for this particular dark spot, a black spot here. Go! Okay, we are at a couple of minutes, so I'm going to stop it there. Also, we can see my polar alignment is not perfect. So I'm getting some drift as we are imaging. And let's quickly try with this field of view and see what we can get. This is going to be a much lower frame rate, but we can try. This is fun. And we're done with the imaging for now. So my next step will be to actually process this, see how well the QHY camera with those tiny, tiny pixels worked. And also, like, we'll see how much detail we could get simply by having this narrowband Herschel wedge. This is super cool. And it says like it can get hot, but honestly, it isn't really getting hot. One of the big reasons is I have like the diaphragm at the minimum setting there. I've quickly stacked and processed the videos that we took of the sun and via the Antlia Herschel Calcium K 3nm bandpass wedge together with the QHY 53715 super small pixels camera and the Founder Optics f6 106mm aperture telescope. All of this on loan. And on the details of the image, you can see the result here. You notice that the color is wrong, but I think it looks super cool like that. This is because in the processing software that I use, IMPPG, I was basically taking the negative of the image by using the curves transformation of that particular software. And so we get that super cool kind of color, which I think looks pretty amazing. And, I could probably post that online and say like, oh, this is an H-alpha data from a solar telescope. And I think a lot of people would believe it, right? And what I did notice is that unfortunately I am not in precise focus, together with the fact that the sun was already quite low when I was doing the imaging. And so if I zoom in, you can see that the image is kind of blurry. I tried to use unsharp mask, didn't quite work. And we can see the same thing here. So yeah, it's not perfect, but it is still pretty cool with those two images. I need to get more practice at focusing on solar details. It's really, really hard. But where things get awesome is with not the full disk, but the partial disk kind of image. I think this looks super cool. We have so much details, almost like filaments on the surface. And yeah, this is like a complement to white light. I think it looks amazing. And for the upcoming eclipses, if you're using this with a larger sensor, let's say like a 174 type of sensor, you'd be able to get the whole surface area of the sun. Or if you pair it with something like the ASCAR V telescope that I also reviewed on the channel, I put links above again. It's like really, I think, nice to get like full disk images. This is going to be a lot of fun, and I am actually surprised that we're able to get such details and such contrast with just a 3nm bandpass. Now, there is an asterisk to that. I am not an expert in solar imaging, and I haven't done a lot of white light solar imaging, so maybe a lot of those features might be visible with just a white light filter. I don't know. So if you are watching and you're kind of like an expert in solar imaging, let us know your thoughts in the comments about this Herschel wedge with the narrowband filter combination. While you're on the way to the comments to comment on it or to check what the experts are saying, you may want to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and if you want to really support me and to really like help me make new videos and keep going on the channel, you can even join my Patreon or the channel on YouTube as a member. It really makes a huge, huge difference, and you guys truly make the channel possible. So thank you so much. So what are your thoughts on this little piece of equipment? Is that interesting? Is it too expensive? Would you just prefer to pay more to get the quark chromosphere, so you get like a known bandpass, kind of a known value? Or do you think it's a good compromise? Or is it something that is superfluous and you think is unneeded, I think a lot can be thought about of this item. I personally think it has a really nice niche at that particular price point. It's a good idea at least, and it gets pretty cool results. So yeah, in the end, it's really going to be up to you what you think of that. But with that, that's really all I had for this video. So thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much to our All-Star Telescope for sending over the Herschel wedge from Antlia. And it was a blast to use loaner equipment for pretty much everything in this video. So that was a lot of fun. With that, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget whenever you can to look up at the stars or the sun, but with proper protection. Be very, very careful when you're watching the sun. Again, super, super duper important. So only observe the sun, image the sun when you absolutely know 100% what you're doing. But again, yeah. But with that, I'll see you next time.